Welcome to Wrapped Up Wednesdays.
Yo, what is going on, YT? It is your boy Diego, but you can call me Chancho or Chancho, whatever floats your boat. And I'm here with as always, with my co-host Ashley. Ashley, address the people, please.
Hi, YouTube. So glad to be back. So glad to see you.
So welcome to episode 3 of our true crime series that we've called Wrapped Up Wednesdays. And boy, do we have a crazy story for you guys today.
Wild.
We have a story on a Dexter Morgan wannabe from the show. We'll get into what it is a little while later. If you're new to the channel, then welcome to the only show on the entire internet where the title not only describes the stories that we talk about because we know who the killer is, but it also describes the state of the co-host. We are wrapped up in our blankets and we have our favorite snacks, and we invite you guys to do the same. And we're gonna invite you guys, if you're new, to go ahead and subscribe. That way you can hear a new true crime story every single Wednesday.
Yeah, and of course, on every Wrapped Up Wednesday, we like to bring a snack. So our snack of choice is Skinny Pop popcorn and, once again, the famous, the extraordinary, ta-da! Coke Zero! Now, if you guys remember, last episode we had gummy bears with chamoy and also Coke Zero, because on this channel, not only do we like gummy bears with chamoy and Coke Zero, but we also are obsessed with Skinny Pop popcorn. Not only that, it's a really cool alternative for like healthier version of popcorn, because I'm a popcorn lover and I love extreme butter. And Diego always gets mad at me because it's like too much butter.
Well, but on this channel, we also season our popcorn because it's not enough to have it just plain Jane. So what do we add to it, Ashley?
Pro tip, we also do popcorn seasoning at H-E-B or Target.
Whatever local supermarket you guys have near. If you're not from Texas, we're sorry, but you do not have H-E-B.
Here, everything is better. But I think they do sell it at Target, Walmart, and H-E-B.
They do.
I don't think they sell it at Whole Foods, or maybe Whole Foods has like their own special thing. But my favorite is the yellow like little can, and it's the butter flavor. And Diego's is
the white cheddar, which is the blue bottle. And trust me, you guys season your popcorn, it's gonna taste super good. You guys should, pro tip for your popcorn.
Yeah, pro tip for your popcorn.
I also want to take this time to thank you guys for all the support that we've had on every single one of these episodes, the last 2.
There's only 2.
So if you haven't seen those, go ahead and feel free to check those out.
They're awesome.
We have 2 awesome stories. They're interestingly both on the WWE true crime stories. So don't forget to, if you're true crime fans, don't forget to hit that like button below. And without wasting any more of y'all's time, so we can get right into the story, as I mentioned really briefly, today's story is all about the guy named Mark Twitchell, aka the Dexter Killer. Now, just in case you guys happen to not know who Dexter is, Dexter Morgan from the TV show, Ashley, do you want to go ahead and give a description of what that is?
Yes, but before I do, I want to say a quick disclaimer. Warning, this episode contains explicit details of a murder. And if you guys are not up for it, please
feel free to go.
We have other videos that are not on Wrapped Up Wednesday that I highly recommend you guys to watch, because this is a gruesome scene. You have been warned.
So Dexter,
yes. This was a super popular show that came out on HBO Stars, if I'm not mistaken, or Showtime. And it's basically about this main character named Dexter Morgan. Now, his job is a blood spatter analyst for the Miami Police Department. And his job, guys, is to go to a scene. And you know how y'all see crime scenes where there's like blood everywhere? So he's supposed to picture like, oh, she got hit in the baseball head and that's why the blood went left. And then he punched her and the blood came out of her mouth and went to the floor. Like the blood tells the story is basically what I'm saying, right? So he already like tells him like, oh, this is what happens. The police department goes, tries to find the guy, and then tries to convict him, right? Now, if he does get convicted, Dexter's like, oh man, he got away. However, if he gets away, then Dexter plays this like vigilante type of person where he's like, ha ha, I'm so glad that you didn't get convicted because now I get to kill you. And so basically what he does is he lures that like rapist, murderer, whatever the
criminals, the worst of the worst.
The worst of the worst, right?
Basically who Dexter thinks deserves a worse punishment than they got.
He lures them into his kill room, and in his kill room he has the entire room is covered in plastic, and then in the middle of the room is a stainless steel table, and right next to it is a bunch of like tools. I'm talking saws, butcher knives, scalpels, you name it, right? Now, when he lures them, he's like, oh, you thought you got away, but now you're going to die by my hands.
Oh.
So I know. So he straps him to the table. And then as a momentum, he like gets a scalpel. He cuts their cheek, takes a portion of their blood and puts it on a...
Guys, we're not scientists, and I completely forgot what those things are called, but they're glass slides. Are they called glass slides?
Glass slides. Yeah,
yes!
Yeah. There you go.
Throughout the entire time we were practicing, we could not come up with it, but it's called glass slides.
Yeah, like Petri dish and stuff like that. Testers.
I don't want to name you guys, but I have a friend who's a biology major. If you know what it is, drop it down below.
Okay, glass slides. He puts the blood in the glass slide and then he puts it in a box because that's where he keeps all his kills at, right? And so then he just goes about it like killing the person. But they're awake the entire time, so they're like getting tortured. And he dismembers their bodies and then he dumps them in the local river or ocean in Miami. And he gets away with it.
Yeah, so that's a description of the show Dexter. It's
awesome.
It's a pretty nice show. And side note, this
Funny
is
story.
a cool little story. So when me and Ashley first started talking before we got married and all that stuff and had a baby,
that escalated
the
quickly.
first time we went on our first date, I had a Dexter lanyard and it had Dexter written on it, given to me by one of my friends. You know who you are. And so when Ashley and I went on our first date, she was like, "Oh, I like your lanyard."
I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, a fellow Dexterin.
She was like, oh, Dexterin.
I just made it up.
She was like, oh, look, you've seen Dexter too. And I'm like, Dexter? I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I had never heard of that show or seen that show. And she was like, you've never seen Dexter? Why are you wearing the lanyard, you poser?
Yeah,
and I was like,
well,
my friend gave it to me for free. I wasn't gonna not use my friend's lanyard.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then I think I made you watch like 3 seasons of Dexter.
I think I got through 3 seasons. It was really good, but then I just kind of stopped watching it. No particular reason, I just stopped watching. But again, today's story is based on a guy who copies this guy in his form of murder, and that goes ahead and brings us straight into chapter 1 of the story.
Let's get into it.
The Wannabe Filmmaker.
Uh-oh.
So Mark Andrew Twitchell was born in July 4th, 1979 in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, or as Ashley says, Edmonton.
Wait, Canada again? Guys, what's going on?
Guys, if you're from Edmonton, our past 2 episodes have been about people from Edmonton. So this is the third in a row.
Is there something in the pie y'all are eating?
Something's going on over there, man. So from an early age, Mark had a really strong interest in making films, which led him to graduate from the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology in the year 2000. We don't really know a lot of stuff about Mark, but we do know that he has a wife named Jess, and he has a daughter named Chloe. And Mark said that he was always a huge Star Wars fan, which, to be honest, same.
Everyone is, right?
So he made a short film that he directed himself that he named Star Wars: Secrets of the Rebellion.
Honestly, I would never watch it just because Mark made it.
Well, yeah, now that we know what we know, right? And records show that I don't think it was ever released or anything. It was just like an indie film that he decided to make on his own as a fan. So aside from Star Wars, Mark was also obsessed with Dexter.
Uh-oh.
So again, Ashley just gave a description of what it is. Mark ran a Dexter Morgan Facebook page where he would essentially talk about it like with other fans that also wanted to hear about Dexter stuff. And he eventually made a female friend on this page, and they would eventually message about their love for Dexter and how much they related to the Dexter character.
How much do you relate to a killer? Let's be real.
Unless you're literally Dexter, you can't really relate to Dexter because he was a cop who was a serial killer / vigilante. So an article that's in All That's Interesting states that Mark began writing his own movie in which the plot focused on men being lured into a garage under the false pretense that they were going to meet a beautiful woman. Essentially, bring in married men, pretend that they're going to cheat on their wives, and then kill them. So the killer is then supposed to get away with murder and have the victim's family think that they'll still be alive, but on vacation. Mark thought that would be really cool to, in real life, lure men into his garage, fake attack them, and then let them escape, so that way people could be like, oh my gosh, I escaped from this guy, he lured me to his garage and he pretended to attack me. And he was just trying to create buzz for his movie coming out.
The press was supposed to cut. I guess he thought the press was going to go to his house and be like, what's your movie about?
Yeah, but he was trying to create buzz. This is a really weird way to pretend to attack people.
Considering that Mark wasn't even that big of a person.
No,
So it's like,
exactly.
what kind of buzz were you creating?
None. So, yeah, that's all we have. That leads us straight into chapter 2.
Yay!
The first attempt at his first murder. So Mark decides to come up with this idea to lure men into his rental garage, and he creates a fake dating profile where he would disguise as a woman, as a beautiful woman, on the website Plenty of Fish.
Can I just pause you there? Like, is Plenty of Fish still a thing?
I actually looked it up. I think it is.
So I wonder, like, obviously I know why they call Plenty of Fish, because there's like plenty of fishes in the sea, but like that has got to be like the weirdest like name,
I mean,
right?
it's not as bad as Christian's Mingle or whatever.
Christian Mingle.
So on October 3rd, 2008, Gil, but is it Tetrol, is under the impression that he is going on a date with a woman named Sheena that he had met on this website, on this dating website called Plenty of Fish. Now, Sheena, interestingly, who is actually Mark, of course, if you're following, please.
Right.
He refuses to give Gil an actual address, but instead gives him really weird directions on where to meet her. And Ashley, I'm gonna have you read these, please.
Sure. So stay along with us, guys, because it's very descriptive and informative.
Yeah, it's like that's not how you typically invite someone over. Why don't you just give them your address?
You're just like, hey, I live on.
It's kind of sus.
Very sus, red flag. So basically, this is what the message says. It says, so okay, Friday. If you're coming from the north on Grote, get on Calgary Trail, and when you get to the south side and jump on Whitemint, then south on 50th Street, take a right on 40 Avenue, and after a block or two, take the very first right into the alley. It's marked by a yellow crosswalk sign, so pay attention. Can we, like, this is too much. And then it goes on to say, then go left and pull into the only driveway on your left that isn't paved. LOL. Seriously, whoever heard of a driveway that looks like the Amazon? Whatever. It won't swallow your car, I promise. There's some garbage. Sorry. There's some garbage up against the fence, like an old couch and such, but it won't be gone by Friday. What? Who knows?
But it might be gone by Friday.
Sorry, but it might be gone by Friday. Who knows? Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. Like I said, the garage door will be open for you a touch. Don't worry about neighbors thinking you're a burglar. Everybody knows there's nothing valuable in there, except my car, of course. Oi?
Oi? Except my car, of course. Oi. I guess that's a Canadian thing.
And then it says, see you there, Sheena. Yeah, first visible back door coming out of the garage. Narc. I'm sorry.
Dude, like, what's going
I
on?
meant to say knock away. There's certainly no other driveway along our alley like this one. And the half-open car door is a dead giveaway.
Dead giveaway.
Dead giveaway.
I knew something was wrong.
Giveaway.
It's a dead giveaway.
And then she ends it by saying, see you 7 on Friday. Guys,
Thank you,
butchered.
Ashley. That was honestly one of the worst readings I've heard in a while.
I'm
so
sick.
Gil follows these instructions and he ends up at a garage. He doesn't think too much about it. He comes out of his car. I mean, come on, guys. The directions were super sus. So he would later recall that he gets out of the car and then he gets hit in the head with a stun baton from behind. Gil stated in the documentary, My Only Nightmare, I was just really bewildered. I didn't know what was going on. That's when I looked back to see this man hovering over me with a hockey mask. And we'll show you guys a hockey mask. Mm-hmm. At this instant, I knew that there was no date. Yeah, I mean, that gave it away, right?
I mean, I would hope so.
So Gil was able to luckily get away, and he didn't tell anyone about this encounter later on because he felt embarrassed that he got tricked by this guy who catfished him, basically, to try to kill him.
Honestly, I would be embarrassed too.
Yeah, I mean...
But, like, to not say anything, though?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would do that.
I don't know. I feel like I would immediately tell everybody, like, guys, I was supposed to meet up with this girl, and I ended up getting attacked in a hockey mask.
And I almost died.
And I got away with it. So, Mark was never able to attack Gil the way that he intended to because Gil was actually able to overpower him and escape. So Mark, our killer, was not satisfied with this attempt, so he decided that he would try again just 1 week later. And
the
remember,
balls of this guy.
I know, this guy's crazy. So that leads us straight into chapter 3.
Bum, ba-da, bum. Chapter 3, The Murder. So, if y'all can remember from Chapter 2, a week after Gil escapes Mark's treacherous hold, this is where Mark is like, listen, I still want buzz for my show, so let me set up another trap. So once again, Mark has not learned his lesson at this point. And it's kind of also like, I got away with it. Let's see what else I can get away with. So once again, he goes on Plenty of Fish and he poses as a beautiful woman, except instead of Sheena, now he's going by the name Jen. So a week after Gil escapes, on Friday in October 2008, he is scheduled to have a date with Johnny Altinger, who at the time is 38 years old. So Johnny's like super hyped. He's been talking.
Excited.
Yeah. He's been talking to this girl, Jen, and she's like super beautiful. And he's like, oh my God, I'm going on a date.
She's like a baddie and he's a nerd.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect description. So all of Johnny's friends are honestly super surprised because like Johnny's not ugly, but like Diego said, he's a nerd.
He's a nerdy type of guy. And the girl that they're seeing in the photos is like a baddie.
Yeah.
In a bikini and stuff.
Yeah, they say that like in her profile picture, she's like in a bikini and she's a brunette and she's gorgeous. And they're just kind of like, Johnny, how did you pull this? Which, if you ask me, is kind of like messed up of the friends, but yeah. At least they humble him, you know? So Johnny also has a friend named Dale. And
plays a big part.
Huge part. Honestly, we all need a Dale in our lives.
Yes, we do.
And you'll see why. So Johnny's telling Dale about this, like this whole thing. He's super hyped. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm going on a date with this girl named Jen. And Dale's like, man, this whole thing is sus. And there's two reasons. For starters, Jen will not give Johnny details like an actual address to the date. Just like
he gave to Gil, those weird looking instructions.
Really weird looking instructions. So Dale's like, why won't she just give you an address? Like, that's so weird. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, she also basically only wants to go on this date with Johnny for a one-night stand. And like, listen, Dale's kind of like, okay, this girl's like super beautiful and she can get any guy in the world to like have a one-night stand with. Like, why is she going after my boy Johnny? Like, red flags. Like, no way, Jose. So Dale, being the good friend that he is, he's like, listen, man, like whatever she sent you, like
send it to me.
Send it to me. I'm your bro. I'm just looking out for you. If anything happens, like I've got your back. I'll know where you are.
What a good friend.
Such a good friend. So Johnny leaves the house. He's following the instructions that she gave him, but he never actually does send them to Dale. He messes up there. And so around 6:30 p.m., Johnny arrives to that garage, if y'all remember from chapter 2, and he gets out of the car and he sees that Jen isn't there. Instead, it's this like random guy who's saying, oh, this is my garage and I'm
making a movie here.
I'm making a movie, exactly. And so that's when Johnny calls Dale and he's like, listen, man, Jen's not here. Some random guy who's making a film is here instead. So Dale's like, all right, just go home then. So that's what Dale thinks that Johnny's doing. He thinks that he's gonna go home and like that'll be the end of it. And then around 7:30, Johnny then sends a message to Dale saying, never mind, Jen's here and we're gonna continue the date. But what we learn later on is that actually wasn't Johnny, that was Mark.
Mark, after he did the deed.
He did the deed, and to cover his tracks, he made it seem like Johnny was gonna stay and like have this date with Jen. So it's kind of messed up. But Dale doesn't know any of this, right? He's thinking like, okay, like my friend's gonna stick out the date. And then before he's gonna go to bed, he decides to call Johnny, but Johnny never answers. But again, this is because Mark has already killed him and he doesn't want to answer the phone because then it's going to be like a dead giveaway.
Dead giveaway.
So before like Mark kills Johnny, what happens in the garage is Johnny, according to Mark, he remembers that Johnny got out of the car and was like super enraged that Jen wasn't there, that in fact Mark was there, and that he decided to attack Mark out of a fit of rage. And that Mark recalls that they were like in a physical, like an equally physical match where they were just like tussling around the ground. And he uses a lead pipe, excuse me, I'm still recovering from a cold. He uses a lead pipe covered in duct tape to basically hit Johnny in the head and knock him unconscious. But in the process of all that, he says that he accidentally, and quotation marks, guys, he accidentally stabs Johnny to death. Now,
how do you accidentally stab someone to death? Well, no, you know what? There's no way. There's no way.
No, because if he's claiming that, like, oh, I was just gonna knock him unconscious, if you did knock him unconscious, why would you go back and, like, stab him? Like,
oh, it was an accident. Oops.
It was an accident.
Oh, did I accidentally stab you? My bad, bro.
Oh my gosh, I did not mean to.
Oh my God,
do
what an
that.
accident.
Jeez. So, because he accidentally stabs Johnny to death, in a state of shock, guys, he then decides to dismember Johnny's body. Okay, come on now. No. None of this was done accidentally, but he says that in a state of shock, he decided to dismember Johnny's body and then proceed to burn some of the body parts. But he noticed that burning the body was too noticeable because...
This is the part that's gruesome, so...
Yeah. I probably should
Go
have.
on. Yeah.
So he said that burning the body was not a good idea for two things. One, the smell, and two, because of the smoke. So he decides to 86 the burning body parts and then decides to get rid of the remaining body parts in the sewer. So Mark claims that he killed Johnny in self-defense.
No.
I'm not buying it.
No, he was a murderer.
He's a murderer. I'm not buying it, but that's what he says. So he said that he claimed Johnny in self-defense, and he stated that everything he did to Johnny's body was not an actual representation of who he was, because he said that he was a good man who made terrible decisions. Guys.
Come on.
Like, I'm a good person, and sometimes I make terrible decisions, but...
Yeah, but our terrible decisions aren't killing someone.
Yeah, like, you don't
like
see me on the 5 o'clock news.
Eating fast food is our terrible decision.
Exactly. Like, we're trying to, like, eat healthy, and sometimes I'll have McDonald's, and that's my terrible decision. I mean,
it's a good decision, though, because...
In the moment.
Let's be real, McDonald's is pretty good
It's
sometimes.
awesome, man. Those hot and spicy. If you're from Texas, you know the hot and spices. If you're not from Texas...
One time we went to California... Super side note.
Yeah.
But one time we went to California during our honeymoon, and we went to the McDonald's, and we were like, hey, we'll have 2 hot and spicies. And the lady was like, what?
What number is
What
that?
is that? And I was like...
We drove away.
I looked at Ashley, and I was like, oh, we're in California.
Yeah, no.
And she was like, what is that? I'm like, it's like a McChicken.
McChicken.
But it's spicy, but it's a McChicken, but it's also spicy. And she was like, we don't have
the
that
patty
here.
looks red,
And
orange.
I was like, oh, all right. And then we
Yeah.
just sadly didn't get that. So proceed.
Anyway, so he said that basically he was a good guy who made terrible decisions. However, if you guys can remember in chapter 2, you know how he made that like friend on Facebook, the female friend? Well, he messages her that same Friday, or sorry, that weekend. I think it was like the next day, Saturday, and says, he tells her this: suffice it to say, I crossed the line on Friday and I liked it. Now, if you're going to claim self-defense, why are you going to go around
And say that you liked it.
Yeah, like this isn't a Katy Perry song, guys. Come on. So all that happened. Then on Sunday, 2 days after the date, Johnny and Dale were scheduled to have a motorcycle ride, you know, like being the best buds that they are. Being bros. But Johnny was a no-show. And Dale automatically thought this was like super weird because Johnny would never bail on him. Like,
They're besties.
they're besties. Like, you know how you have that bestie, like, you know every single thing they do? Like, that's basically who they were. So he tries calling Johnny, but Johnny doesn't answer. It goes straight to voicemail, again, because Mark has Johnny's phone. So after Canadian Thanksgiving, which is in October, which I thought that was, like, really cool, but also kind of weird, because, like, our Thanksgiving in America is in November, and theirs is in October. Just wanted to point that out. Several of Johnny's friends decided to visit Johnny's place since they hadn't seen him in a couple days. Because remember, the last time they saw him was on a Friday. However, Johnny never answered the phone, and that's when...
The door.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Johnny never answers the door, and from what they can tell, like, nobody's home. So, and another thing that Dale noticed was that Johnny's motorcycles were uncovered. Now, like Diego was saying, they're
Red
besties. Yeah, red flag, because Dale says that anytime Johnny was going to be gone for an extended period of time, he was always going to cover his motorcycles.
It's just one of those things that you know about your best friend.
Yeah.
One that you hang out with all the time. If you see something that they don't typically do, it's like you just know, you have that feeling that something's not right.
Yeah, like something's up. And see, that's why we all need a Dale in our lives, guys. So on October 13th, on a Monday, 3 days after Johnny's date, this is where Dale receives an email from Johnny basically saying that he and Jen were staying in her vacation home in Costa Rica and that he was not going to be back until December 10th. He also said that he was going to be checking his email sporadically and that he was going to send a phone number he was going to send a phone number shortly. However, Dale is like, bro, come on.
Dead giveaway.
Like, you can't trick me for two things. Dale knows that Johnny hates tropical weather. Why the heck is he going to Costa Rica? You know? And number two, Dale automatically knows that this is not Johnny sending the email.
Because of the wording.
Exactly. Like.
So anytime, like, this is an example. Like, if Ashley sends me a text through her phone, I know her texting style. I know how she texts. I know if she uses emojis or if she doesn't use emojis. I know all that stuff. So this is what happened with Dale and with Johnny. Dale reads the email and he's like,
it's very
hold
formal.
on. Yeah, this doesn't sound like, you can just feel somebody's voice.
Well,
You can hear somebody that you know really well, and if it's them or not. Like, if somebody else were to text me through Ashley's phone, I would know that it's not her.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same way with you.
Same with Diego. Yeah, and so basically Johnny's like,
that's not his style.
That's not his style. Also because he's like, he couldn't feel the personality coming from the email. Also because Johnny ended the email with his name, Johnny. And Dale's like,
he doesn't do that.
My boy has never ended an email with just saying Johnny. Like, no. So because he knows that this is not his friend, that's what's going to lead us into Mark getting caught in chapter 4.
When Mark gets caught in 4K. So yes. Dale receives that suspicious email from Johnny claiming that he is going to Costa Rica for the holidays. Again, Johnny hates the heat, and he knows in his heart that Johnny did not write this email. So he decides to come up with a test to see if this is actually Johnny that's writing the stuff. So Dale
what a good friend.
writes, yeah, exactly. So Dale writes a follow-up email to Johnny, and he asks him who's going to pick him up, who will pick up Johnny's brother from the airport for the holidays. And this is a trap because Johnny's brother doesn't actually need to be picked up from the airport, and only the real Johnny would know this information.
Only the real Johnny would know.
So this is where it gets a little bit more sus. The email gets sent, and he waits for an answer, and he never gets an answer. So Dale goes ahead and files a missing persons report, but he doesn't get... This is one of the most tragic things that happens whenever, like, these stories. He doesn't get much police support. The police start saying things like, hey, Johnny's a grown-up, he's 38 years old, and he decided to take a tropical vacation with this girl. Just go ahead and let him live his life. He's an adult.
Yeah.
And the police tell Dale that he should wait until December 10th.
But I want to add there, though, like, as we were stating in chapter 3, this is Dale's best friend. He knows the in and outs of Johnny. Like, police should take this seriously because it's like, dude, I'm telling you that, like, my best friend would never do this. But I think it's because Johnny's 38 years old and they're like, dude, just, like, let him live his life in Costa Rica.
Well, that's what they think, but nobody knows you better than your close friends, right?
Exactly.
So a couple of days pass, and the next person that hears from Johnny happens to be Johnny's boss. So Johnny, it's not really Johnny, but Johnny sends his boss a resignation letter to quit his job, and his boss... You know, he does find it a little bit weird, but he says, okay, he wishes him the best. And he says, hey, he responds to the email and he says, hey, tell me where I can send your final paycheck to. But once again, Johnny never responds.
Mum's the word.
So shortly afterwards, Johnny's friends start noticing that out of nowhere, Johnny will start being active on his profile on the dating website, Plenty of Fish. So after 5 days that they don't hear back from Johnny, Dale urges the police. He's like, please take my report seriously. And the police inform Dale that they're going to send a policeman that's going to take his statement. But, of course, they stand him up and they never go and take his report.
Which I might say that police officer or, like, station should really get in trouble for that.
Yeah. I mean, although we know police do a lot of sus stuff sometimes. So a week passes by, and Dale and a couple of friends decide to go and take matters into their own hands, and like, you know what? Let's go investigate Johnny's place.
We'll be the policemen.
Exactly. So they're able to enter his home through an unlocked window. Guys, lock your windows. So while they're in the home, the friends start noticing that Johnny didn't take the stuff that you would expect people to take when they're going on a vacation. His clothes, his toiletries, and all his luggage is at the house. So it's like, okay, hold on. He just left without taking all of his stuff. Another major flaw that they notice is that Johnny, and this is like the real key,
Right.
he left behind his passport. Dude,
Sips Coke.
how are you gonna get out of the country without your passport?
Yeah, you cannot leave the United States without a passport. You can't even enter the United States with a passport. So it's like, without it, sorry.
Yeah, it's like, okay, this is the day-ahead giveaway. So Dale once again is like, okay, hold on. He calls the cops and he's like, guys, please take this more seriously. All of his stuff is here. We don't think he actually took this trip voluntarily. So after a week that Johnny's missing, police finally begin to start their search. They ask Dale.
It only took a week.
Yeah. So they asked Dale for the address that Johnny was giving. And Dale's like, sorry guys, but he didn't give me an address. And he received detailed directions on how to meet up with this person. So police will end up at the same garage that Johnny had described. The garage is attached to two separate houses. So the police check to see if any of the owners or the people that live nearby there are named Jen. Again, Jen is the girl that Johnny had met up with on their date and is taking a vacation with. Right. So the police find out that a man named Mark Twitchell, red flag, has been renting this garage as what he is using as a film set.
How coincidental.
So Mark, when the cops ask him, he's like, no, I don't know anybody named Jen. Or I don't remember seeing a guy named Johnny this Friday. So the police ask Mark if they can go ahead and start searching his property. And he's like, yeah, sure, let's go ahead. Mark tries to play off. And this is like the beginning of a bunch of signs of Mark being like
being
dumb about like his like form of cover-ups that are super obvious. So he's like, what's going on? This lock isn't mine. Somebody changed the lock that's here. But the police are able to like easily break through the lock that he had there. They enter the garage, and as soon as they enter, the first thing they notice is like a burnt smell. And the police also notice, and this is where I'm basically describing the set of Dexter's kill room. So the police will notice a stainless steel table in the middle of the room. And on that table, they find a receipt that says that he bought a bunch of cleaning supplies from a hardware store. So he buys paper towels, rubber gloves, industrial solvent, and of course, he lined the room with plastic sheeting. Dexter. So Mark says that the reason he has all this stuff, and here we go again with the bad lies. He was a bad liar. So he's like, oh guys, the reason I have all this stuff is because I'm a film director and I've been filming a movie in which we use a lot of fake blood, and the only way that I can clean this up is with the stuff that I just bought. So the cops are like, hold on. They're like,
wait
okay,
a second.
hold on.
This isn't my first time.
Yeah. So the police ask Mark if he can go with them to the station and that they can take his statement on the case. Mm-hmm. And at this moment in time, Mark isn't still being seen as a suspect, but it's like, okay, hold on. Pretty sus behavior. So the investigators find it suspicious that Johnny Altinger went missing at the exact same location that Mark was filming his supposed fake film with the fake blood. So Mark is acting normal and with high energy, and he's giving off the vibe that he's innocent. So he's playing off this innocent character.
Right.
And the investigators are kind of believing that he's innocent at this time.
It's just basically suspicion at this point.
Right. So the investigators at this moment are being denied a search warrant because the judge says that they don't really have any evidence that is sufficient for them to search his place. But the investigators can't let this go, so they ask Mark if they can enter his garage one more time.
Right.
And again, Mark is, he goes along with it. He's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure, come over. I have nothing to hide.
And then this is where more information that he conveniently had forgotten to mention. But again, here we go with his lies.
Yes.
So Mark tells the cops that for the past couple of weeks, his car had gotten broken into and a few things had been stolen. He also states that the front door was open while he was gone, but that he specifically remembers, he's like, guys, I had locked and closed my doors, but someone had broken in. And also, this is another one, Mark claims that a few nights ago, he was parked at a gas station, somebody comes over to his window, ASMR. Wait, that's not ASMR. Well, somebody knocks on his window when he's at the gas station, and they're like, hey, I'm leaving on a vacation with this girl, and she's going to buy me a new car eventually, so I don't need my car. Do you want to buy my red Mazda?
It was a red Mazda hatchback.
Who has a red Mazda hatchback, Ashley?
Johnny does.
Okay. So conveniently, he ends up. So it's like, oh no, I'm gonna buy the car
If you happen to see a red Mazda, it's because I bought it on the gas station.
for $40.
Guys, $40.
He said that the person at the gas station sold him the car for $40, and so they want to take his statement at the police station. And Mark writes an 8-page testimony. He also writes that he believes that someone did something in his house because something was burnt in his oil drum and all his house supplies were being used.
But I also want to add though that like, you know how he had told the cops that they can go over to the garage and like check it out. He didn't even let them go into the garage because he started telling them like, oh my god, somebody broke into my house and like, I bought a red Mazda for $40. So it was all, what's the word? It's all like pre-planned, like, oh my gosh, I can't have them go into the garage because then they're going to see everything.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So at this point, the cops start getting really suspicious and they're really not believing his story. So they go into like an interrogation, like a longer interrogation. So they set up a 24-hour surveillance on him and they seize his car in his house, hoping that they can find some more evidence. Now, when they investigate through his house, they find a tour guide to Costa Rica, if you remember, that's where the vacation was, and they find blank postcards from Costa Rica that he's planning probably on sending out to people to make it like less sus, like, hey, I'm in Costa Rica having a blast, wish you were here. And they find the black hockey mask that has 2 spots of blood on it. So they find they look through his car also, and they find a bunch of handwritten post-it notes, and on this post-it note he has 3 notes. 3 notes?
Well, it's like...
Sorry, a few notes on his post-it notes.
Yeah, he has like a whole bunch of post-its and like some of them aren't interesting, but there's 3 post-its that have a list on it.
Ship phone. Use Wi-Fi for general email. Kill room clean sweep. Kill room clean sweep. Ship phone.
What could this possibly
Seems like he's trying to cover his tracks to me. I mean, I'm no investigator, but that's...
I'm not a detective. But...
So, investigators also find a huge blood stain that's soaked in the carpet of his trunk, a stained blood steak knife, a blood-stained military knife in his backpack, and a laptop. Now, in this laptop, that's where the cops would find 2 files named SK Confessions. Ashley, what does SK stand for?
SK Confessions stands for Serial Killer Confessions. And we would like to point out that he wrote this on his computer and then deleted it.
But the cops were obviously still able to recover. Whenever you delete something on your computer, it's never really gone.
It's on your trash bin,
It's always there.
right?
So, no, it's like, even if you like empty your trash bin, they can still recover it somehow. Cops have their ways, I guess.
Interesting.
So in SK Confessions, he's basically talking about a fictional story of luring a single man into his garage and killing him. And Mark is describing what the man wore and what Mark used to kill him. This is supposed to be a fake story, but the cops are like, hold on, this seems a little bit too real like to be fake, because to be just a fake diary.
In the story SK Confessions, the killer has a hockey mask, but in Mark's home, what do they find? They also found a hockey mask. So they're like, wait a second.
There's too many similarities between SK Confessions and his actual life.
Right.
So after all this evidence that they find in the house and the car, investigators finally get a search warrant for the garage. And here they would find duct tape, handcuffs, garage bags, BB gun, stun gun, a long metal pipe that was covered in dried blood.
The list goes on.
They found overalls, industrial cleaning supplies, and a dust mask. So investigators were able to recover every piece of equipment that was found in the garage, and it was all covered in blood. And on October 31st, Halloween, 2008, Mark was arrested and he was charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder,
which we will get into.
And another crazy coincidence in this SK Confessions are the names that he chose for the characters that were, they're supposed to be made up. But the characters that he chose, if you remember from the beginning, his wife's name is Jess and his daughter's name is Chloe. And in SK Confessions, the names that he chooses for the supposed fake wife is Tess, and the name of the fake daughter in SK Confessions is Zoe. So it's like, okay, come on, man. You didn't even try. You didn't even try. This is clearly a confession.
Yeah, but he's trying to pose it
as if it's not. As if it's like a fake thing.
Right. It's like, oh, I'm writing it, and I just so happen to name the wife and daughter Tess and Zoe, but it has nothing to do with my wife Jess and Chloe. Chapter 5, guys. Was this inspired by Dexter?
It all comes to this.
Let's see. So if you guys can remember, in chapter 1, we stated that Mark was a huge fan of Dexter, and even had, again, that Facebook page dedicated to Dexter Morgan, where he would talk about the episodes with his female friend companion that he made on there. So Mark claims that this movie he was making that Diego mentioned, I think in episode 1 as well, or episode 2, chapter 2, about House of Cards, he was trying to pay homage to Dexter Morgan, because remember, he said that he related to Dexter, which we were kind of like, how the heck could you relate to a killer? Anyways, so Mark's plan was to create this movie where he was going to play the main character and then lure a husband or even like a single man to his like kill room, aka the garage, and then proceed to torture him, dismember his body. And he was planning on burning those body parts, but that didn't work out, so he ended up just throwing it in the sewer, which, if you ask me, stuff like that to me is inspired by Dexter, but Mark denies that he ever had anything to do with Dexter. He's like, no, what I did was based on my movie, it wasn't anything based on Dexter. But I mean, there's too many similarities, right, Diego?
Yeah, so I mean, he literally had a kill room.
Yeah.
And the wrapping of the stuff in plastic, the whole luring somebody in, cutting up their bodies the way Dexter does, and then disposing of it in some sort of there's just too much similarities.
Yeah.
And the fact that he ran the page, come on, he was
Dexter
clearly
Morgan Facebook page.
inspired by, not inspired, but he wanted to basically be Dexter.
Yeah, copy him in every sense of the way. So you're probably wondering, okay, so what happened to this guy, Mark Twitchell? Well, all this happened, the killing happened in October, and what we know is that in mid-November, Mark's real-life wife, Jess, not Tess from SK Confessions, files from divorce. She said that she hadn't seen Mark since the cops seized his house. Do y'all remember that in chapter 4? When they're interrogating Mark and they come up with nothing, so they put 24-hour surveillance on him and then they seize his home. Since that moment, she left Mark and she hadn't seen him. And then she finds out that he actually was cheating on her with his ex-girlfriend. So she's like, so not only have you been...
Cheater and murderer? Come on.
Come on, guy. Ugh. Horrible. So yeah, she finds out that he's been cheating on her with his ex-girlfriend. And not only that, Jess finds out that he actually quit his job months before these killings ever took place. And she said she had no idea because he would leave, go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning.
He had his work schedule 8 to 5, but he wasn't actually working.
Instead, he was actually chilling in his garage, or sometimes he would go to his parents' house. Which again, okay, if you're chilling at your parents' house, shouldn't your parents be like, what are you doing here? Or not only that, shouldn't the parents have mentioned to Jess, hey, just so you know, your husband was with us basically all Tuesday? I don't know. I find that super weird. So yeah, she said that he was actually out of a job that entire time, but he was putting on this front. So I can't even imagine, homeboy, bro. So if you guys can remember from SK Confessions, the killer that
By the way, SK Confessions itself is 35 pages long, so we're clearly not going to go through all of it.
No.
But there's a story in there that, Ashley, you want to talk about that story that's in there?
Yeah. So in SK Confessions, the killer, aka Mark, states that he had lured a man into the kill room a week before the disappearance of Johnny Altinger. The man states that he had got hit in the head and lost his balance. He turned around and he saw a man with a hoodie on and a black hockey mask, instead of the girl that he was supposed to be on a date with. The man begins to fight back and eventually gets away from the killer.
So the police are like, okay, hold on. If this is indeed true and isn't just made up, there's somebody out there who got away.
Yeah. And so the police realize this and they issue out like a statement to the public via newsletter, stuff like that. And they're like, hey, if you so happen to like go on a date with a fake woman and then this guy attacked you, like, please come forward because we believe that you could have been victim number 1. So 2 days after Mark gets arrested, which remember was on October 31st of 2008, this is when Gil comes forward as the first victim who got away.
And that actually became his nickname for Gil, the one who got away.
Yeah.
And he even went on to write a book about his experience escaping from Mark.
Yep. And that's crazy too because like, so basically SK Confessions, you're probably wondering like, what is this? So Mark, the murderer, decided to make that film, and then to bring hype to it, he was like, all right, I'm gonna like do this in real life to create a buzz for my film. So he starts off with Gil, but that doesn't work out and he ends up getting away. So then a week later he lures in Johnny and he fake attacks him, but really ends up killing him and like dismembering his body and throwing it away. So on his laptop, he creates SK Confessions, which is Serial Killer Confessions. And that's where he's writing a story about everything that happens, like how he attacked Johnny.
It's more of like a diary than anything.
Exactly. So basically, he thought it was deleted and he was like, ooh, sweet. But when, like Diego was saying, the police uncovered it, he's like, oh man, they found my diary. They found my confessions. So he starts posing it as like no, that's not real life. That's not my diary. In fact, that's the movie that I'm making. Do you guys remember when you came to my garage the very first time and you saw that receipt and I told you how I was making that fake film? Well, that's my screenplay.
Nope. So then they're like, okay, this is real. So then they started taking it as more of a confession, and that's why that led them to being like, hey, Gil, where you at?
Yes. And then 2 years after they, arrest Mark and they in fact discover that Johnny has been murdered, in June 2010, this is where Mark finally informs police of where he dumped Johnny's remaining body parts, because remember, he tried to burn them to begin with, but it just was a total fail. So he decides to lead the police to where he dumped Johnny's body, and there's no reports on why. People say that he just did it because he wanted to like have a clear conscience, and maybe he didn't want that in the back of his head. So yeah, that's basically the story of...
That's the story. That's wrapped up. Ashley, do you want to say anything before we go?
I just want to say that if you haven't seen the show Dexter, I really recommend watching it.
It's a good show.
I don't recommend being a copycat of Dexter.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend being we don't recommend being a murderer on this channel.
No, please don't, guys. Just live a normal life and be happy. Don't try to kill anybody or be a hero in that way.
Yeah.
Just don't. But yeah.
And to the family and friends of Johnny, that's so sorry for you guys.
Yeah. And for Dale, I'm so sorry that the police did not take you seriously.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so sorry, man.
So that wraps up today's episode.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. If you stuck around for the whole thing, we have another story coming for you guys next week. So thank you guys for watching again. We hope you guys return next week. If you guys liked it, don't forget to give a like, give a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't yet, because we're here for you guys every single Wednesday with a new wrapped up.
Unless I'm sick.
Unless Ashley's sick. That's what we missed last week. I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, that wraps up today's story, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
And don't forget to bring your snacks and blankets.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, a pro tip again, check out that popcorn stuff because it's really good.
Let us know if you like it. Bye.
Bye.